What's going on, good people? Today we are talking the second weakest of the chromatic dragons, also known as the fuchsia dragon. No, I'm kidding. It's actually a green dragon. So, green dragons. What are they? Green dragons are bad-tempered, mean, cruel, grinchy, grouchy, grimy, greasy, green dragons. They hate goodness, they hate good aligned creatures, they love intrigue and kind of enslaving woodland creatures. They'll kill anybody that can't be controlled or intimidated. They just think like Grinch on steroids that breathes chlorine gas and bites your head off. Yeah, that's green dragons. Anyways, so when they're born, they have thin, small, and a deep shade, almost like black, green, and that's their scales. And this brightens up as they get older. Scales become lighter, larger, turn forest emerald and olive green. Kind of almost a natural camouflage. Green dragon scales are notably not as thick as other dragon scales. They're actually quite smooth and flexible, which is kind of interesting. And also to note, in some circles or some novels, if they're ever read, green dragons actually heal slower than other dragons too, and we're not really sure why that is. A possible explanation could be that they are just lower constitution than other dragons. They're not as hardy as other dragons because they live in the woodlands. They're not in icy or deserty or mountainous terrain. They have it pretty nice. So green dragons speak their own tongue, which is the same tongue common to all evil dragons. Now I believe 1 in 10, maybe a little bit more than that, have the ability to communicate with any intelligent creature at birth, and then 5% per age category from there. So, kind of similar to a white dragon, they are smarter, definitely smarter. And let's go into combat. So, they initiate fights a lot of times with no provocation, like picking on creatures of any size. They just don't care. Like, they'll fight on a whim if they want to, which is kind of interesting because they're lawful evil, which, just picking a fight out of nowhere isn't really a lawful evil thing. But we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, if it appears that the target will be difficult to deal with, it'll stalk the creature, using its environment for cover until it determines, the best time to strike and the most appropriate tactics to use. So there's the lawful portion. If it thinks it can just beat you, it's just going to fight you. But if it's not sure, it is lawful, so it will follow you around and hatch a plan and things like that. Where a white dragon would just, try to attack you. So green dragons are a little more cunning. If the target appears formidable, the dragon doesn't necessarily back down. It's just they change the tactics. They'll fight with their breath weapon, magical abilities, and spells. So, they won't even go into melee. Like, you see a bunch of adventurers that look like they know their way around a sword. They'll just breathe on you and cast their spells and stuff. Why fight them, If the target appears weak, the dragon definitely likes to make its presence known and kind of harass and kind of terrorize its targets. And then when it gets tired, it pretty much just attacks with its physical attacks, its claws and bite, just to make the fight last longer and the creature to be in more agony. They're kind of really, really evil, I guess. They're not very friendly dudes. Sometimes these guys like to control people through intimidation, persuasion, suggestion. They oftentimes like to question adventurers to learn about their society and why they're coming through this forest and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting. So you can make some cool encounter possibilities with that. So it's a breath weapon. Poisonous chlorine gas. Now in the old editions, which was first edition, this used to be if you were caught in the 50-foot long, 40-foot wide, 30-foot high bundle of gas, you made a save versus poison. If you failed, you died. Straight up. Well, they've changed that since, and now they deal damage, and you can avoid the damage, half damage and stuff if you make your save versus breath weapon and such. And then as a mage, I believe it starts casting at 6th level. So that means like anytime that what that means is like anytime, and this is for 2nd edition, mind you, and each edition has its own rules, but this kind of promotes through, I believe. The older a dragon, the higher wizard level they're considered when they're casting spells. So the spells will have greater effect because they're essentially a higher wizard level. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But, yeah. From birth, they're immune to gases. Just immune to any, harmful breathable substance. And then as they age, they gain these powers. And these can vary upon edition, but it's pretty universal, I would think. When they're really young, they can water breathe. When they reach adult, they can do the spell Suggestion once a day. When they become mature, they can cast Warp Wood 3 times a day, which is basically like a spell where you can actually like shatter wood and stuff and mess up a boat and things like that. Really interesting possibilities with that one. When they're old, they can do plant growth once a day, which pretty good. Very old, which is probably it's like this would be about the 2nd highest power level of dragon. They can cast Entangle once a day, and that's pretty gnarly. If you've ever familiar with the Entangle spell. And then once they're Worm, which is the oldest they can get, they can do Pass Without Trace 3 times a day, which literally means they can just walk through whatever they want without leaving any trace that they were there. So, really scary. When they're born, they're typically about 2 to 7 feet in body length, and then 2 to 5 feet in tail length. So they're probably a total of 4 to 12 feet when they hatch. From the first few weeks, basically, they grow fairly large, fairly quickly. At their biggest, the body length can be 116 feet, and the tail length can be 104 feet. And now, just for comparison, I should have had this ready. I want to look at what a white dragon is. Because white dragons are the weakest, which is something to remember. So, white dragons are 104 body length and tail length of 94. So these guys are literally 20 to 22 feet longer than white dragons. So they're much larger. And now their habitat in society. They're usually found in subtropical, temperate forests. The older the forest, the bigger the trees, the better. The sights and smells of the woods are pleasing to the dragon. It considers whatever forest or woods it's in, it's a territory. Entire thing. So they can have some pretty massive land base. Sometimes the dragon actually goes into like a mutual relationship with other forest dwelling creatures. So evil dwelling forest creatures, sorry. Which keep the dragon informed about what's going on in the forest, surrounding area, and it's usually in exchange for their lives. If a green dragon lives in a forest on a hillside, it might enslave some hill giants and use them. Fun fact, it actually considers hill giants to be its greatest enemy. Fun fact. Green dragons make their lairs underground chambers far beneath the forest. The majority of green dragons encountered will be alone. However, in a mated pair, the female will actually attack, and the male will take the young to a place of safety before joining in the fight. Green dragons are extremely protective of their young, despite their evil nature, and will sacrifice their own lives to save their offspring, which is not the case at all like white dragons. White dragons, if you remember back, didn't care at all about their young. Their young literally had to watch them and figure it out. No hand-holding whatsoever. Green dragons, completely opposite. They're like crocodiles, man. They love their young. Or is it caimans or alligator? Google it. Put it in the comments. And now, although they have been known to eat practically anything, including small shrubs and trees when they are hungry enough, their favorite food is elves. So if you have any elven players in your party, feel free to use a green dragon. And they also consider younger dragons a delicacy, so they will eat other types of dragons. Hill giants eat dragons. The young dragons they consider a delicacy. So, cool adventure idea I've always thought is the hill giants have captured a baby dragon. Baby dragon finds, or mama dragon finds a group of adventurers. Cool stories. That's how awesome campaigns are made. And feel free when you're using dragons to remember that they are intelligent and that they don't necessarily always just attack, especially some of the ones that we're going to move into. And that if there's something to be gained, if they can use the players, they will. And just keep that in mind. I'll be back next week with my personal favorite, the Black Dragon. Thank you.